It's really concerning that when it comes to COVID-19, so many Canadian provinces, particularly Ontario, operate in what I would call an information silo, in that you really only know what's going on in your own province, and you don't have a sense of best practices, what other countries are doing, what other provinces are even doing, to compare your response to. So you can't gauge whether what you're doing is normal or not, or whether it's very restrictive, or whether it's, a lighter touch when it comes to the restrictions. We just aren't talking about enough. We're not looking at other jurisdictions. And it's kind of interesting. It's ironic because particularly in Ontario, particularly in Toronto, I know people like to pat themselves on the back and say, oh, I'm so worldly, I'm so informed, I'm so cosmopolitan. No, you aren't, at least not anymore. People just seem really clueless about what's going on in other jurisdictions, not really able to gauge sort of what's going on in their own province. And I think that's been true for many things that we've had in the past. For instance, the school rules. I would say Ontario's school rules are so regressive, so restrictive compared to other jurisdictions. The latest iteration of this, vaccine passports. Now, whatever you think about the vaccine passport, you support them, you oppose them, whatever your perspective, Ontario's and a number of other Canadian provinces, pretty much how it's done in Canada, is very severe to how it's being done in other countries. So I'll use Ontario as an example because that's where I'm at and that's where I write about the most. In Ontario, the vaccine passport applies to so many indoor locations, gyms, movie theaters, indoor dining, many other facilities. And the rule, you got to show proof of 2 doses of vaccine, all 12-year-olds and older. That's it. No exemptions, a couple very minor medical exemptions, that you have an allergy to an ingredient in the dose, or that you had a severe reaction to the first dose. So they're letting you take a pass on the second dose. That's pretty much it. And people would say to me, well, Furey, what else is it going to be? I mean, a vaccine passport's a vaccine passport. That's how they work. You got to have your 2 doses. I mean, you either have it or you don't. Not so. There are other jurisdictions that do it very differently. France, for example, what they do over there is they say, okay, if you want the green light for the vaccine passport, you got to get the 2 doses of the vaccine, or you've got to show that you have had and recovered from COVID-19 recently, as in they acknowledge natural immunity in their vaccine passport, or you've got to show that you've had a recent negative test. Really? Really. That's what they do in France. Other jurisdictions have similar things like that. So there's a whole bunch of other things going on there. If for some reason you're really opposed to getting the vaccine, well, they go, okay, if you want to get tested a couple times a week for the rest of the time the vaccine passport's in place, you're welcome to do that. So they're not pretty much wholesale denying a whole bunch of people access to these facilities. They've come out with reasonable workarounds. And you look at how France does it and you go, well, what's the problem? Why can't we do that here? And that's why we got to look around at other jurisdictions. That's why we got to talk about how they're doing it. I mean, again, whatever you think about Ontario's vaccine passport, you support it, you don't support it. I think even people who do support it need to acknowledge it's really severe the way it's done here, and I think they should probably revise it, tone it down. Why can't you do it more like France?